My fellow citizens and residents, I bring you greetings, and I want to thank you for tuning in to another session of Leadership Matters, Leadership with You, and Leadership for You. I am Dr. Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and with me tonight I am happy to have the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education et al., the Honorable Shawn, the esteemed parliamentary representative for St. Christopher V, and we are also accompanied by Dr. Tricia Esdaille, a senior education officer in the Ministry of Education. I think I have the title wrong. Dr. Tricia, would you want to indicate?
Senior Assistant Secretary. Senior Assistant Secretary.
Senior Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Education. So, Deputy Prime Minister, would you say good night to the listening audience?
Good evening to everyone. It's my pleasure to be back here for our next edition of Leadership Matters.
And Dr. Esdaille, would you bring greetings?
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to represent the Ministry of Education. I hope to have an engaging opportunity with the listening audience.
Well, we are all happy to be here, and I want to begin by thanking ZIZ for affording the public the opportunity to be updated on matters of state. I want to say that this is an exceptional public service which ZIZ has been providing to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and indeed to its listeners all over the world. By allowing the public to pose questions on this forum, ZIZ facilitates the highest level of accountability and good governance in our country. So on behalf of all of us in the cabinet and in the country, I want to say thank you to ZIZ Radio and Television for their excellent service to date. I am advised that ZIZ has been doing this for some 59 years at the level of the radio, and it is therefore ZIZ Radio is the longest serving broadcasting entity in our federation. I am further advised by the chairman that ZIZ TV has been on air for some 50 years. This, of course, then speaks to an excellent record and excellent public support. I should also thank the staff of ZIZ and all the employees here, especially the technical team, who has been with us week after week as we present Leadership Matters. Equally, the professional staff that has been carrying the National Emergency Operations Center briefing on a daily basis. I want to commend them for the excellent work they have been doing in helping us to bring informative, reliable information to the public at this time when we are all facing a difficult pandemic. To be sure, COVID-19 represents a crisis like none has seen before. And indeed, there is no template. All over the world, countries are attempting to deal with this pandemic and are groping to find their way of resolving the difficult challenges which they face. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are doing much better than most, and we are certainly trusting in God and the cooperation of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to see us through. At the cabinet level, we have made defeating COVID-19 and taking St. Kitts and Nevis through a new path of growth, development, and prosperity the major priority of our government, while still focusing and running the affairs of the country. I can assure the listening and viewing audience that your government, under my leadership and a competent and committed cabinet, it's doing its very best to take us to a better, healthier, and safer place. And with the help of you, our people, we certainly will get there. We have from the onset stressed an all-of-society approach in the war against COVID-19, and we ask for your full support in this effort. Right now, my most important job is to protect the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and my singular focus is fighting this disease to protect your health and well-being. Without the people of St. Kitts and Nevis in a healthy condition, there is no nation. And though the pill at times may be bitter, the recovery, I can assure you, will be very sweet. I cannot do it alone, and I need the support of the citizens and well-wishers. I need all of us to play our part to keep ourselves, our families, our communities, and indeed our country very safe. The personal responsibility you take in this fight may save your own life. I want from the outset also to offer commendation to the medical experts, led ably by Drs. Hazel Laws, our Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Cameron Wilkerson, our Chief of Staff at the JNF. Of course, these two patriotic doctors have received the highest commendations from all across St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean for the excellent work they are doing in the fight against the COVID pandemic. The results of their work, of course, is self-evident. They have successfully flattened the curve that is prevent any significant spike in confirmed cases, and they have prevented our health system from being overloaded. The people of this nation have put their trust in this team, not by being asked to do so, but from the realization that they have kept us safe at every step of the way. And that is why tonight we're on this program, Leadership Matters. Every day, our health team and our patriotic sons and daughters are at the National Emergency Operating Center, briefing us and helping us to get the facts, while at the same time seeking the cooperation of every citizen and resident in the Federation. Our health team is an excellent one, and they are the legitimate voices speaking to you based on verifiable facts and scientific evidence. As I say this, I must also ask our citizens to be aware of the fake news, the misinformation, and the politics that some would wish to bring into a decidedly health matter. Let us all, as mature, sensible people, put the partisan politics aside for the time being. This is a health crisis that should unite us and not divide us. Anyone who is doing otherwise, instead of uniting behind our excellent health team in the fight, cannot have your health and well-being as a priority, but they want to use the people as pawns for an ulterior motive. I pray God wisdom for all of us and the power of discernment so that we can know good from bad, right from wrong, and each of us will do the right thing. I ask God's protection for this particular country. Later on, I would want to give some further input as to our strategy, how our plan has been working so far, and some of the tangible benefits that have come. I would also like to give some further update as we build out our stimulus package, the largest and the best and most comprehensive package in the Caribbean region. Clearly, we are on a plan, and the plan is to get back St. Kitts and Nevis to as near normal as possible. Perhaps life will never be exactly the same in the near future. Certainly the modes of greeting, the handshakes and so on are out. Certainly the hygiene and our etiquette as it relates to sneezing and so on, coughing, all those modes have long passed. never to be returned again. So we are in new times, exciting times, difficult times, challenging times. But yet, as a people working together, we shall overcome. And St. Kitts and Nevis will rise again at a new level of performance, bringing peace, prosperity, and a country that is safer and healthier for all of us. With those opening remarks, I want to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to bring his own opening remarks, and then perhaps Dr. Esdaille, I want to just bring a few remarks. We will then open the line. When we open the line, we want to give as many persons an opportunity to pose questions. We will therefore restrict each caller to no more than 2 calls. 2 calls in the first round, allowing others the opportunity to make their calls, to give their input, advice, and suggestion, so that we have the widest cross-section of persons being able to engage the government officials here. So I want to thank those who intend to call in advance of their calls for cooperating with those simple guidelines. Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. This evening, I want to focus my remarks primarily on the education sector. I choose to do so in light of the fact that yesterday, the 20th of April, would have been the day for schools to reopen following the traditional Easter vacation. However, in light of COVID-19, a decision was taken to postpone the opening of schools for at least 2 weeks in the first instance. I would have spoken to this matter last week, Thursday, as I gave a briefing at the daily New York briefing. Essentially, what has happened is that the education sector began planning for this possibility since weeks before schools were scheduled to go on Easter vacation. As a matter of fact, I think that we have been way ahead in terms of our planning, and so the Ministry of Education has made good progress in terms of putting things in place. Before schools closed, we were able to give our students a learning package. That learning package is basically a self-taught or parents-assisted homeschooling sort of package. It is expected that students would have gone through the learning package and revised work that they would have done during term 2. Now that schools should have been reopened, we have gone into the phase that we consider the self-study phase, and that is utilizing the flow study SKN. What is the flow study SKN? It's an online study site, self-paced, that is, students are able to educate themselves, of course, again, with the assistance of parents and other family members at their own pace. The Ministry of Education has issued usernames and passwords to the students. If there are any students out there who have not yet accessed the site, we are asking the parents to get in touch with the teacher or teachers for your students and get assistance in terms of getting the username and the password. The good thing about the username and password is that those would allow for the Ministry of Education to be able to monitor what the student has done in terms of being able to provide feedback, or if there are technical issues, addressing those technical issues. Again, that is one of the advantages of the ministry being able to give each child a unique username and password. That represents phase 1. Phase 2 would involve online or virtual education. That is, students would be taught using devices, but instead of the students being in a regular classroom, you would have a teacher providing instruction to the students via whether it is a laptop, a tablet, a cell phone, whatever device is available to the student. Provided that we are not able to open within 2 weeks, then we go to that particular phase. Some persons may ask the question, if a student doesn't have access to a device, how is that student supposed to be able to participate in the online education classes? Before the closure of schools, the Ministry of Education did a survey within all of the public and private schools. That survey entailed asking students whether or not they have access to a device, whether or not they have access to internet service at home. The students, for the most part, would have responded, and that information was fed back to the Ministry of Education. Coming out of that, the Ministry of Education recognized that there is a gap for some 1,800 devices. We have since ordered approximately 1,800 devices to meet the needs of those students who do not have access to a device. I've heard questions from some parents such as, well, if my child wasn't in school, how is my child going to be accommodated for? The ministry was mindful of that, and so in terms of the number of devices which the ministry ordered, we took into consideration that not all students would have answered, and so we ordered more than what the feedback that we received indicated. Additionally, we have begun talks with all of the internet service providers here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, that is Flow, Digicel, and the Cable, to provide internet service to those students who will be in need of such. That information is before us. We have a gap above 700 households without that service. Again, if there is a need to do so, the Ministry of Education will be installing internet service in those 700 households throughout St. Kitts and Nevis. We have negotiated for approximately 3 months. In other words, up to 3 months, that service will be provided by the Ministry of Education free of charge. Again, I repeat, if there is a need for us to do so. So that those students who do not have internet service, we are saying to you that the internet service will be provided. As a matter of fact, within the first month, because the installation period may take some time, all of the devices will be provided with mobile service. That is, within the first month, all of the devices will be outfitted with a SIM card, so that at least for the first month, you're able to utilize mobile service. While students are expected to be at home, it means that even if for one reason or the next, the student isn't at home, or let's say you have an instance where within a home there is no electricity service, that should not be an issue because you have access to that mobile service. So these are some of the plans that the Ministry of Education has put in place. Yesterday, Monday the 20th, we began training our teachers, and we selected teachers from all of the schools in the use of the Microsoft virtual online platform, Microsoft Team. That is the platform that will be utilized to provide our students with their education. So the teachers are being trained, and as soon as we are ready to roll out this program, more information will be provided to all of our students, our teachers, parents, etc., so that we basically can have as smooth as possible a transition into this new type of education platform for our students. I continue to say that this government has been a caring government. This is a government that has performed. This is a government that amidst this pandemic, we have ensured that as best as possible, we are able to meet the needs of our students. Let me take the opportunity to say a very special thank you to the entire team within the Ministry of Education, which has done a wonderful job in bringing us to where we are thus far. Additionally, I say thanks to Digicel, Flow, and the Cable for partnering with the Ministry of Education. Of course, I can't omit the NTRC because this program has been partially funded by the Universal Service Fund, which is administered by the NTRC. The gentleman in charge there, Kevin, I can't quite remember his last name at this point in time, but I will before the end of the program. I want to say a very special thank you to him, because when the ministry and the government reached out to him, he promised us that within a very short period, he will ensure that the application is turned around and we will receive an answer. He definitely did so, to the extent that within a few days, the ministry received an answer, a positive answer, and we have been able to collect the funds to assist us with rolling out this aspect of our education program. Thank you. I will now turn to Dr. Esdaille to provide any additional information that I may have omitted, such as the dates for the submission of SBAs for CXC, what we are looking at in terms of the timeline for CXC exams, test of standards, etc., because those are questions which I have gotten from some persons.
Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Prime Minister Harris for the opportunity to address the concerns of the public in relation to the education of our children, and to also extend a thank you to our Deputy Prime Minister as well for this opportunity to clarify further issues. I would like to begin by taking the opportunity to thank our teachers. While it has been clear that the ministry has been planning and is taking a phased approach to education, currently engaging in the first phase of online education, focusing on self-paced study through Flow Study platform, I want to commend teachers, because I am aware that many of our teachers in St. Kitts and Nevis already began engaging students through online platforms, that they took upon themselves to reach out to their students, to support them in the development of their SPAs, and to ensure that their students remained on track with their learning, even during this protracted period of school closure. And so I commend, and the entire ministry commends, this effort. And I hope that parents and the general public are affirmed by the commitment that has been demonstrated by these teachers to ensuring that our children's education is continued. With respect to CXC examinations, what I can say is that currently to date, CXC has not indicated that there are any changes with respect to the syllabus content for CCLSC, CAPE, or CSEC. Should this change, the Ministry of Education would subsequently relay this information to the general public. Now, I believe at this juncture most are aware that modifications to the exams have been made, and that the CXC took a policy statement to issue a multiple choice examination, and that provisions are made for the examination to be done online, and also for information to be collected offline and subsequently uploaded to the server. Additionally, students are expected to submit SBAs, and SBA submission is expected to be 100% online during this period. Now, with respect to dates, for CSEC, SBA deadlines have been extended to May 30th, 2020, and the SBA deadlines for CAPE and CCSLC have been extended to June 30th, 2020. Naturally, I appeal to parents to ensure that their children continue to work and that they ensure that they're keep to the timelines. Naturally, there are internal deadlines that have to be set by schools to ensure that this information can be relayed to CXC in a timely fashion. And so we're asking that parents continue to monitor and to support their children in this process. With respect to additional changes with our national examinations at this time, what I can say is that the Ministry of Education has taken the position that we will be modifying the administration of tests of standards for the academic year 2019-2020. We recognize, given the current situation and the national response to COVID-19, that administration of tests of standards cannot proceed as it would traditionally have done in the past. It is our intention this year to focus on grade 6, recognizing that parents would have concerns about the transition of children from primary school to secondary schools. Naturally, the details regarding the assessment of students will be worked out and subsequently relayed to the public. Now, changes to test of standards have been made previously, with the Ministry of Education focusing on key developmental stages. That means that we have looked at examining students' mastery of content in grades 4 and 6. However, given current realities, test of standards will not be administered for students in grade 4 this academic year. The priority will be given to grade 6 students to ease their transition within secondary schools for the upcoming school year 2020-2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esdaille. I want, just before we open the lines, to commend a few other persons. And I want to add to the list all the teachers and the staff of the Ministry of Education who have been doing an excellent job in getting our students ready. Across St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a student population of just over 15,000 persons, starting at early childhood, into the primary, secondary, and up to the CFBC. So a substantial portion of our population are undergoing learning exercises between early childhood and the CFBC college. Over 15,500 persons. My commendation also is extended to the Health Emergency Operations Center, the HEOC and the NEOC, the National Emergency Operating Center. And it was based on the results today, which CARFA returned. Tests of 17 persons returned 17 negative results. And I think this is a very good development in the context of our fight. We have only 15 confirmed cases and 1 person is now recovered. So this is good news in the fight towards the fight against the COVID pandemic. 17 tests returned by CARFA, and the 17 of them were negative. Yesterday, while on my journey, I heard Granny on the radio with one of our very interesting traffic program being hosted. And he was talking frankly to bus operators about ensuring that the passengers they pick up to take to their destination, each one of them should be wearing masks. I want to thank him for that encouragement, and he also encouraged other operators to sanitize their buses after every trip. This is the right thing to do, and to have one of their peers themselves speak to them in a very frank and candid manner I want to thank Granny for providing that leadership. I must also commend the Social Security Board, because just yesterday they paid their first batch of applicants their share of the 1,000 monthly assistance that we had promised as part of the stimulus wage fund. I'm advised that over 1,000 applications were processed. And these applications covered the rank of the unemployed persons who suffered loss of earnings due to COVID-19, and of course the self-employed persons such as busmen, braiders, etc. We are off to a good start. Of course, all persons affected would not have been assisted at this particular moment in time. The good news is that the process has started. It will take some time to reach to everyone. And we have 1,000 applications already processed, notwithstanding the shutdown, the lockdown, 24 hours impacted upon the ability of the Social Security to respond. I must thank the director, Mr. Antonio Maynard, and his staff who took time out even under the lockdown days. They got the permission of the Commissioner of Police to enter the workplace to be able to bring relief to persons on Monday. Equally, my commendations go to our HR department and the Treasury department for facilitating the payments to our government auxiliary employees in a timely basis. Moreover, over 4,000 persons were able to secure the $500 stipend which my government introduced. For that, I thank Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Mrs. Elvita Simpson-Brown, and Mr. Levi Bratcher from our Treasury Department for facilitating those payments. Finally, I want to commend our diplomatic staff in Washington, D.C. in particular, and in Cuba. Indeed, we have a number of students overseas, and they, like the rest of us here, are experiencing difficulties where they're at in the US of A and in Cuba. Our government's response has been to, firstly, leverage the support of our diplomatic missions to inquire of their well-being, their needs, and of course to respond appropriately. About some 85 students in the United States of America have been in contact with our embassy in Washington, D.C. And Ambassador Dr. Thelma Philip Brown has been able to raise substantial support from our citizens abroad and our well-wishers to help those of our students who are in need. So I want to commend the instrumentality of Ambassador Thelma Philip Brown and the good citizens and well-wishers of our country who provided some support. We have additional support which the government will provide to these students on the basis of need. They are required to make a case, that is to apply for assistance through the Chief Personnel Officer, and that officer is responsible for all training and support to our students abroad. That officer, working with the Permanent Secretary in Education, will do the necessary assessment and will offer grant support on the basis of need to those applicants. In addition, where our students abroad may need greater support in order to complete their studies, we have spoken with the Directorate of the Development Bank to provide soft loans with moratorium, of course, and the payment of principal and interest to to allow those students to be able to complete their studies. In some cases, or in all cases, studies have been interrupted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is another area of support. So we have the efforts of our diplomatic missions mobilizing support initially for our students abroad. We have a program now where we have set aside certain sums for grant support to those students on the basis of need. And there's a third element of support which is more long-term and substantial. That is loan financing on the most favorable terms, including a moratorium on principal and interest. With respect to our students in Jamaica, some of them have indicated an interest in returning home. Of course, we all are aware of the difficulties with respect to travel, and most countries around the world are in a lockdown with respect to their ports of entry. Nonetheless, our offices are in contact with the government of Jamaica and with the airlines to see what would be possible. With respect to our students in Cuba, our ambassador there, resident in Havana. Havana is Her Excellency Verna Morris Mills. I spoke with her on Sunday night, and she advised me that she is in regular contact with our students in Cuba. Our students are dispersed or residing in all around Cuba in various locales, some of them close to, and some of course are very far from the capital city of Havana. Nonetheless, she has been providing the necessary counseling and support as best she can. And I want to commend her efforts. She has been able, in some cases, to provide students with masks. She has been able, in other cases, to provide some students with food, as Cuba at this time is undergoing a period of difficulty with respect to food supplies, in part a consequence of the blockade which has been going on for many years. Certainly the development of the pandemic has had its disruption with respect to supplies there. So we are working all around, not just for our citizens and residents here in the jurisdiction of St. Kitts and Nevis, but wherever our citizens are and they are experiencing difficulty, the government is minded to do the best that it can at this particular juncture in time. So I just wanted to bring commendation to the sterling efforts that we are having from our NEOC and our Health Emergency Operating Center, to thank one of our well-known bus operators in Granny of St. Peter's for the candid exchanges he had on radio, encouraging all of the bus operators to fall in line with the new guidelines. We have, of course, listened to the pleas of the bus operators, increased the number of passengers that they can take on board from about 4 or 5 to 8 passengers. And so that is a significant increase, but they are required to ensure that persons wear masks. They are required to sanitize their buses after every trip. And it was very heartening to hear one of their own popular bus operators spreading that good news. And I also commended the Social Security for beginning this significant payout. And as we think about this thing, we reflect upon the words of the Deputy Prime Minister. Our government has been doing more than any other government to provide direct support to our citizens and residents. While here, we are giving support for salaries and to help offset, rather, the decline in earnings, which many would have suffered as a result of the COVID, at $1,000 per month. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they are offering $300 an average per month. In the large oil-rich Trinidad and Tobago, they are offering $603 EC. In Barbados, they are offering $600 per month. St. Kitts and Nevis is the most generous. And in many other areas, we have outlined what we are doing with respect to students. We could go on to speak about what we are doing in expanding our poverty alleviation program, which has been so important and helpful to assist low-income families. Many more, several hundreds, have in fact been able to benefit from the last payout on Monday from the PAP program because the government had safety net in place. This shows the reliability of the government. The government has been there for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and we trust their good judgment. In good times and in bad, they certainly can count on the Team Unity administration. I want at this particular juncture to now open the lines, and again to remind callers to keep it brief. You are allowed a maximum of 2 questions should you be brief in your presentation. We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the air. That caller, again, we encourage you to ask and get clarity to any area of concern to you. And while tonight we have the Minister of Education, he carries many portfolios. So any matter related to the government, you certainly are encouraged to call if you need to get some support with respect to that. Again, I want to say that we have this week, and I want to commend all our citizens and residents. I gather that 2 of our effort at easement has been a much better improvement over Monday. So all those who were in town, the lines were shorter, I'm advised, and of course our people continue to exercise discipline and to follow the social distancing. Yesterday at the NEOC meeting, I heard our Attorney General commend the people. He said as he passed to different entities in Bastille, he appreciated that more than 95% of the people wore masks. And this is something that we want our people to continue to do. Of course, there is a penalty for breach of the COVID provision, and there is one specifically which deals with social and physical distancing, and another with the mask. I think we have a caller online. Yes, do we have that caller? We are having some technical difficulties, so we are hoping to get that one sorted out. Our efforts, though, to bring some easement is in accordance with the World Health Organization guidelines. And I'd want to say that St. Kitts and Nevis is one of the few nations to have met the 6 requirements for lifting of some of the restrictions. And this again speaks that we are a part of success for which we have to commend all members of St. Kitts and Nevis. The all of society approach certainly is working. What are these 6 requirements that we are complying with, even as we begin a slow, careful march of easing the restrictions in place? 1, transmission is controlled. And certainly from the statistics, there has been no notable spike in the number of confirmed cases. Today, as yesterday, the number remained at 15. There is no deaths. There is no one now in admission at our hospitals. So all of these point to the fact that the transmission is controlled. Not that it is eradicated, but it is under control. Do we have a caller online now? Our health system capacities are in place to detect, test, isolate, and trace contacts. Outbreak risks are minimized in facilities such as our nursing homes. Preventive measures are in place in workplaces and certainly in other areas where people must go. And some of these would be issues of the sanitization of hands, etc., that are provided at most businesses, the determination of the social distancing. All those are areas in which we are making progress. Do we now have the caller online?
Hello?
Hello, you're online.
Yes, good night. Hello?
You're online, caller.
Hello? Hello?
You're online, Leadership Matters.
Yes, you could hear me. Good night.
We are hearing you loud and clear, caller.
Yes, good night to the head table, the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. This is Jam down here speaking, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, I've been through Newtown today, visiting some old friends. And me ain't picking on nobody, because when you see things and you bring it to the attention, people say you're picking on certain class of people in St. Kitts. But I've been on Pan Road and watch some Spanish bar, and what Newtown is a place, right? Where is more or less tenement. And in fact, they need sanitizing and they close one another and they run the mask. They don't make no outbreak here and kill nobody, you know. Please, I'm asking you to ask the police them when they see these things, break it up. The same thing happening down by Porcelain, but old Porcelain, but down there, the drinking beers round the table. Mr. Prime Minister, we're not going to tolerate that, you know. This country got laws. And when we put our idea to put in place, everybody's got to work in it. All and sundry. So please, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart, tell the enforcement them stop watch face and do these things, because it's very important. We can't afford to mash up this curve. We're doing so well around the Caribbean. We don't want no stupidness. You hear what I tell you? The amount of young old men in Newtown may ready to lose them yet. So have a good night. Shawn, have a good night. We holding the fort.
Thank you very much, Jam Down. Do we have another caller?
Good night to the Honorable Prime Minister. Good night. And good night to the Honorable Shawn Richard.
Good night.
Good evening.
Dr. Lady Hudia. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to commend you and the unity government. I believe that you're doing a wonderful job. And I want to commend the CMO, Dr. Wilkinson, Dr. Hazel, and the police. I want to commend them. I believe that they well work and they overwork, Mr. Prime Minister. No, Mr. Prime Minister, no, people are saying all kind of things, but I do not believe no other part in the world getting the information like how you do it. The CMO do it, and the government do it, and you come on and different radio talk show, and you let the people know what's going on. And people say, I get fed up and all of this, and I get fed up and all of that. But I like to bring the information out there. And Mr. Prime Minister, I was engaging with a pastor just a few hours ago, and he was telling me that he thinks that you should, if you could open up the supermarket and you could open up the barber shop, he believes that you could open up the churches them too, because the churches them will keep a distance. Even if they got to keep the church twice, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And Mr. Prime Minister, again before I go, with the shopping, with the east and west, I want to know if that's going to be again, that if the number 2 can't be first this time, if you're going to take part again, are you going to just continue to open when and let the supermarket them got the people them to control the crowd. Just look how you have these 2 couple years. Mr. Prime Minister, you're doing a wonderful job, and I want to thank you again. Thank the same for the information. Even my friend them in the state calling me and telling that they're getting information, enough information like how we getting it here. So we want to thank you. You have a wonderful night. God bless, and God bless the Federation of St. Nevis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Politics. Do we have another caller?
Yes. Cabinet. Yes, right. Good night. How we doing? Cabinet.
Night caller, you're on the air. Could
yes,
you ask a
you guys
question?
doing a great job. I'm all right. A lot of rest, a lot of sleep, relaxing. A lot of sleep, relaxing. How we doing, Minister? Well, guess what? My suggestion tonight is that I think the world is doing a great job. The world needs a change. Very great job. Everybody, for me. No love. Nobody have no love. And God chose a way to slow down the way, not by will, but by force. Right? And everybody needs to live together. Look at America. Nobody learned enough from 9/11. 9/11 is nothing. Everybody show out on that. Right? Racism, that's the biggest problem. Let God do his job. He can't do it. But Marley said many more will have to suffer, many more will have to die. Guess what? Talking about St. Kitts, my island, I'm from St. Kitts. I work tourism. Tourism is corrupt. Tourism needs some serious working on. We needed this break. This break is needed. Dog eat dog.
All right, caller. We have taken note of the call. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good night, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes?
Right, Mr. Prime Minister.
Hello?
Yeah, good night, Mr. Prime Minister. Last week I hear you talking about open back up Bayford.
Yes,
and
go
I hear
ahead.
you talking on Win FM about when you went to Guyana, the amount of food that you see they're selling. But I want you to know, if you're going back to Bayford Plantation, I want you to take back Simaco. Both of them. The one by Electric Light and the one up Transpasha. Because if you're going back into food, you need a place to sell the food because the local food that you're selling at the market is very expensive. And once government put in $10 million in agriculture, I think government should get a big part to play. So take back them two places this decade of waste of time. Right, because the one up on sponsor when I pass there and I hear music playing inside there, it just break my heart because when I end up with Tricia, there was place for people put their provision to sell. And it will be better for the country because everybody knows the Caribbean looking at tourists and see what happened today, boat cannot come. We had things in Sinkit, what could have run today up to today. We had cotton, what makes sweet oil. We had the salt pan over on the Peninsula Road. We had milk, used to come from Bayford. You understand? And all them could have survived. We had salt, too much things we had, we could have stand today and think we know how to order them things there. And all them things they're gone. Some carelessness why all them things they're gone. So these things need to come back in place, Prime Minister. Then
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes?
Yeah, good night, Honorable Prime Minister. This is the boy, Rocky Garrett. Just want to commend you on the work that you're doing and let you know that what you're doing, it works. Today, in particular, the line was very small for the supermarket. The only place really had line was like inland revenue, the cable, flow, and some other businesses. So just to let you know, the strategy in terms of locking down curfew, opening back up, it's working, and I want to commend you and keep letting people know that they must be their mask. Question: I'm not sure if you have enough force, right, to put on the road to ensure that persons continue to practice social distancing. I'm still seeing some hiccups, but we are human, and that will happen. Maybe the businesses can put some temporary markers on the outside so persons can know where they are. I've seen police officers, I've seen different forces who are assisting. I want to commend them on that. I've seen also traffic warder who are also assisting in the traffic. Officer Rose is doing a wonderful job. I see Donnelly doing a wonderful job in town when the traffic is very heavy. And those are people you must commend. So keep up the good work. Quickly, on to Deputy Honorable Shawn. Shawn, I see that we are now doing virtual, online. Question: where can one go to print their documents? Bearing in mind that some parents don't have access to a printer. Is there anywhere in the ministry that a parent can go to print some of their documents? Because some persons prefer to write on a hard copy paper rather than reading on the computer or an iPad. So maybe that's something I'm not sure if you have said it before. If not, I think that something can be said about it, or maybe you can look into how you can assist, in having personal print. Also, if parents don't know how to use these devices, I'm not trying to bash anybody, because some of us are not technical savvy. I'm not sure if there's anything in place, right, to kind of teach, lend a helping hand into letting the parents know this is what you do to download the PDF file, or whatever file to access, because I'm getting some complaint that person don't know exactly what to do and what not to do. I know the education is very packed with a big educated staff from the peers come right down. So I know something can be worked out. That's all for now. And keep up the good work, Mr. Prime Minister. Remember, stay safe and stay healthy because we need you.
Thank you very much, Bucky. We will take one more call and then we will have some answers to the question.
Hello.
Yes, caller. You're on the air. Could you go ahead, please?
Okay, good evening. Shawn, this is Austin of Wingfield Road, Old Road.
And just to maybe assist in a way Bucky spoke about a while ago, if there's anyone within this constituency of number 4 who need hard copies being printed, they can come at my home and my son can do all the printing for them free at cost. We have a printing machine at our home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Austin, for that very kind gesture. We do appreciate it. I will allow the Minister of Education to deal with those issues that have been posed with respect to the education sector and the facilitation of students. The Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. For those parents who may be experiencing some sort of difficulty in being able to access the websites, or who may not be technically savvy and would experience difficulties in downloading a particular form, or even as they go onto the site being able to assist with giving their children instructions, my recommendation would be for the parent or parents to get in touch with the teacher for that particular child. The teacher would then in turn be able to, if not assist the parent, at least give some instructions to the parents as to who can be contacted at what office, so that further information and help can be provided to the parents. Yes, we do recognize that not all of the parents will be in a position to assist the child, and so we ask as best as possible to get in touch with the ministry if there is an older child within the home who can assist. Of course, we would expect that that would be the first choice of the parent, or you can even perhaps speak to a neighbor or an ex-parent of a child who is in that particular class, or maybe the child can provide you with a number of a next student who may be able to offer some assistance. As much as the Ministry of Education is able to provide assistance to parents, the Ministry of Education will do so. We do recognize that it's a different mode of learning, and so of course there will be challenges. Even for our own teachers, it's a learning process for them. We have basically asked teachers from the various schools to volunteer in terms of those who already have experience with online education, or those who have an interest in doing so, to avail themselves to the training. Our teachers, it's something new to them. It's not something that they are accustomed to. And as we have said generally relative to COVID-19, it has basically taken the world and taken us into different dimensions, different aspects of living that we would have never experienced before. But I think that collectively we have risen to the challenge. We continue to help each other, and that is what we will have to continue to do until we are able to overcome some of these challenges. Indeed, when you speak about education, you're speaking about learning, you're speaking about development, and this is an education for the students, it's an education for the parents, it's an education for the teachers, it's an education for all of us. But we have risen to the challenge. I know that parents may feel that to some extent their children will be shortchanged, etc. But as best as we are able to deliver education to our children, we will continue to do so in the best possible means that we can. As we evolve throughout this process, no doubt there are certain changes that will be made, changes for the better, and so as I said, it's a learning experience for all of us. To Austin, I say a very special thank you for offering printing services to persons who live in the Oldwood community. This is a proprietor within the Oldwood community who has come forward. It goes back to the point I made a few minutes ago, that together we are able to overcome the challenges together. We are able to help and ensure that we all go through this challenge as comfortable as possible.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Very quickly, Jamdown spoke to the issue of indiscipline in the Spanish bars. I myself have not observed that. However, we are minded to ensure that everyone conducts himself or herself in accordance with the SR&O, that is the Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 5 regulations. We have discussed at the level of the NEOC the need to ensure that more of the information is available in Spanish language, being sensitive to the fact that we have a substantial number of persons who are Spanish speaking and not yet appropriately at the level of bilingualism which we would have liked in the country. And so we are doing the conversion of materials from English into Spanish. We certainly will take on board that comment, and we will have appropriate inspection and, of course, education of persons from that community regarding the virus. So this is something you would certainly see some improvement in. We are going to have persons who are able to speak the Spanish to go into the communities and to do more conversations with those persons who are in breach so that they are better advised. I want to thank again Mr. Politics for commendation of the work of our police, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, and of course the Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. We have had excellent support across the government from all areas. The Deputy Prime Minister spoke to and commended the work of the education fraternity. Everyone understands that this is a moment in time in our history and that we have to work together to defeat the pandemic. So I want to thank politics for hailing and encouraging the frontline workers. With respect to our efforts at public education, this of course is significant, but it is also in keeping with one of the 6 requirements of the World Health Organization in its guidelines for easing restrictions. The 6th guideline speaks to communities being fully educated, engaged, and empowered to adjust to the new norm. And that is why we have taken time, and I personally, as the Prime Minister, has made it an important task to provide leadership in the area of public education. And whether it is on this radio or other radio station, we have sought very frequently to bring the citizens up to date as to the seriousness of the pandemic, that the power lies in them, and there are things that they can do, very simple things, which they and they alone must do. Wash their hands frequently, for example, observing the social distancing. You don't need a policeman to tell you that you need to stay 6 feet. That is being said repeatedly, and we would want you in your own interest to keep a distance between you and the next person in the line. Distance is important now. In fact, some have been so bold to say that distance is now the appropriate way you show affection and love. If you love someone, you ensure that you give them the safe distance of 6 feet. That is why we are also asking that people wear masks. When you wear masks, you help in preventing the transmission of the virus from one person to another. And all of us have to get into the habit. It will take some time. So we encourage, we nudge, we do what we can to ensure that more persons are doing it. the caller who made the reference between the church and the supermarkets, they are all important entities. The church perhaps is more important, but in the context of what we are dealing with, I don't see the similarity. Really, we know that people are going to the supermarket to be able to get their food and other things. And for the vast majority of the supermarkets or people, there's no other option. With respect to the spiritual food, that certainly can be delivered virtually. And almost all of the churches have now gone that route. Indeed, long before we imposed them in the statutory rules and orders, a number of churches had begun the issue of social distancing, had begun to encourage their leadership and membership to basically go virtual. And so a number of churches have been doing it. We want to commend others to get on board with respect to that. I want to make it clear that the regulations does not prevent the church from engage in acts of worship. What it does, it restricts it for the protection of the church membership and indeed for all of us from persons being able to transmit the virus one to another. Regulation 9 at subsection 2 says, sub-regulation 1, that is the prohibition on educational places of instruction and worship from opening. It says sub-regulation 1 does not prohibit any activity referred to therein by electronic or virtual means. This is saying that schools can provide learning, that is regulation sub 1, by virtual means, and that is what Dr. Esdaille was speaking to and the Deputy Prime Minister. Equally, the churches are allowed, as is the norm now everywhere in the world, for them to go virtual in the context of a pandemic that is deadly and which is leaving a large number of persons dead in its wake. So that is something that is applicable everywhere. I want to commend the Evangelical Association and the Christian Council because they have been in full support of these measures, which are intended to save lives, protect people, and ultimately to save the lives of our loved ones. We will want, if things go well at the end of the week, to continue this into the next week. So tomorrow is a 24-hour lockdown. Then we move in Thursday when we open up again and give some ease in. You will note that during the course of the week, more entities are open, more business places were allowed to do. They do. The hardware stores were open, and so on and so on. The buses were able to take more people, and we are allowing that as we listen, and we appreciate the need for people to get back to work, to earn income, to help themselves and to help their families. But at the same time, we have to do it carefully. It has to be well managed, or we could worsen the situation. And that is why those guidelines that I outlined before must be followed. The social distancing, etc., the wearing of the mask, the boosting of your immune system, all of those things we want you to do and paying attention to your hygiene. John Paul speak to the question. So again, what happens next week depends on the success of this week. So far, things are going reasonably well. And if things continue that way up to Friday, we will continue in the following week, which means Monday and Tuesday, we will have limited business operation just as we have now. So there is no need for people to go overcrowding the supermarkets, because 4 days of the week you will be able to access them. The other days, you will have the lockdown, of course. And as things improve week by week, we could get closer to a point where there is further easing, but that depends upon you. The matter of the Bearford's Farm, of course, has long been central to the efforts to develop a vibrant livestock industry in St. Kitts and Nevis, and it has been important in the pursuance of the goal of food security. And so, as part of the Department of Agriculture's own program, they have identified the rehabilitation of the Bearford's Farm to assist us as we build out, implement the $10 million that we have now made available to assist in food security. We have also identified about 135 acres of land in Sandy Point Fig Tree, in Lodge Otleys, and in number 4, I think it's Lambert's, area for farmers who are interested to be able to get some land to be part of the effort at food security. Bucky commented rather on the fact that today was an improvement in terms of the lines of the supermarket. Again, we encourage people to buy in your own communities the things that are there and avoid coming into Bastille to do shopping for things which you reasonably can have in the same quality and at affordable prices in your community. I agree with him that our strategy is working, and so long as it continues to work well and there is no surge or spike in the number of confirmed cases, we certainly will see things get better and better in terms of the application of the SRNOs. I again want to commend Coker for the generosity he has shown tonight, as he did on another program, and we now go back to the lines for any questions. Caller, you're on air.
Yes. Mr. Minister, is that a question? I got cut off earlier. I'm now talking. Mr. Minister, you did a great job. I respect you.
Thank you, caller. We are hearing you.
Mr. Minister, you did a great job.
Thank you.
But it's bigger than you.
Yes, caller, could you continue, please?
Hello?
Yes, caller, you're on air.
Yes. A very pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Prime Minister, and your Deputy Prime Minister, and the good lady there.
Thank you.
This is Culture.
Mr. Culture.
Yes, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to tell you and thank you very much for being a good captain of the economic ship so that you will run it on an economic iceberg. You and your team has been doing well. You hear me? And I want to highly commend you and the whole government for the way you are steering and running the country. And I want to give thanks to everybody who has contributed to this COVID-19 corona problem. It is a war. Hey, turn down the radio.
Yes.
Sorry about that. It is a war against our lives. And so we have to put up our shield and fire back our weapon to kill this corona disease. So those people who fail to support the government with the weapon that we are trying to kill this corona business, they do not love people. Hell, turn down that radio, coming through the phone. Sorry about that. They do not love people, Mr. Prime Minister. And that is to show the people them who are going back to ask to vote for them. They should be ashamed. One of them said if people could line up by the supermarket for food, they could line up to vote. What a havoc we will have in the country if we open any election to go vote. That is pure nonsense and self-concern. Now, I want to support John Paul because I spoke about that Beaufort estate today on Franklin Candid. So I'm supporting John Paul with everything he said. And I want to thank, especially, let me single out these two. Mr. Theodore Brown Vijay, my radio comedian partner, and Mr. Queen Counsel, Mr. Charles Wilkin. For years, Mr. Wilkin has been an outspoken advocate for justice in the country. And look at him, he put his money where his mouth is. And I wish that others economically in the same situation like Mr. Wilkin could do like him and other people. Thank everybody who contributed. Now, Simako was built by Mr. Bradshaw in 1975 to help the people in the surroundings. When a farmer has his products, all he had was to do, take them to Simako, one big sale, he collect a check, he gone back in the ground. And from the moment that man sells Simako, think Simako money could pay off the IMF. Can't work. Everybody know how to go down the beggar stand up to sell 5 breadfruit or 10 breadfruit to get $50 to pay the departure tax. Then Simako there, they could have just go put down the breadfruit and everything, get your money and go on over one time. And take back Simako and the depot. And we have a dead elephant, a white elephant over there, which was built 2008 and 9. And the last time they had races over there, it was 2010. So when they crossing our new pier and say that is a white elephant, that is a young, might be a young elephant, but it's not white. It's an elephant come from the horse racetrack over there. If the government could...
We appreciate the call.
Good night, my dear.
Good night.
Prime Minister. And Honorable Shawn Richard.
Good evening.
And good doctor. Good night to everyone. I would like to talk tonight about the poverty alleviation cash. Prime Minister went on the radio and he promised that he would pay $1,000. He eventually promised and he paid 400 people $1,000. My God. I don't care what nobody says about unity government. We had to be. How we come countries are fighting. Some went 600, some went 6 something. But we give a whopping $1,000 to people who had lost jobs because of COVID-19. Prime Minister, thank you for what you have been doing for our country. You and Mr. Richard and the rest team, I know how to work for you. I know how to work for you. If I used to go to school in ISM, I would have passed maximum. I am certain I would have passed that. Anyhow, I just want to give God the blessing to you all. Shower all you with blessing. Help us that you could help this country as you are doing. Bless all you, guide all you, give all you the protection, love and understanding like you are doing. For there is none like all you. No other Caribbean countries like us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the call. Do we have another caller? Do we have another caller?
Good evening.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air. Please speak up.
Good night.
Yes?
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Good evening. I'm ladies first. I'm Dr. Esdaille, the Prime Minister, and I'm the Deputy Prime Minister. Just a quickie. It's quite evident what the pandemic has done to our tourism revenues. I am not sure what is happening with our citizenship by investment revenues, but Is there, if this pandemic continues for an undetermined length of time, what do we have in place? Do you foresee any situation where we might have to end up in the hands of the IMF again to rescue us to keep our stimulus going? I'll listen off here for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have another call online? Caller, you're on the air.
Good evening to everybody. Good evening to you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. And
good evening
to the lady. I do not remember her name.
Dr. Esdaille is her name.
Yes. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm calling concerning something that we last spoke about, and you had told me to take it up the matter another time. So I'm using this time again.
Yes.
Last time we spoke on the air was concerning the relationship between the state, the Bible, and the authority God has given to the state. What that entails, what it does not entail. And that concerns this very issue of closing downs and enforced closing downs and so on. Now, the scriptures you quoted to me was Romans chapter 13, verses 1 to the first part of verse 3. We talk about the government, God giving the government authority, and we should obey the government, and the government has the right to punish people. But then the latter part of verse 3, and also the whole of verse 4 and verse 6, speaks to the limitation and boundaries of that authority that God has given to all governments. And verse 6 tells you this is the purpose why God has given, and they continually do this accordingly when they're operating according to the Bible. The verses you quote to me only speak to the origin of the authority that God gave the government, and that they do have the power to punish people. But it doesn't go into the limits and duties of government. What comes after goes into that. And so those passages be recognized. I mean, should not be ignored. Otherwise, you'll be quoting text out of context. Also, you quoted Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7, where you talk about God sending the Jews into Babylonian captivity and telling them when they go into Babylon, they should seek the peace and prosperity of that area. But that did not mean that if the government requires anything that is contrary to the Bible, that the saints does not have the right to disobey the government, because that was done in the same Babylon by Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which demonstrates that seeking the peace and prosperity of a nation does not include following government dictates when they go contrary to the Bible. So there again, government authority is shown to be limited, not to be unlimited, and not to be followed unquestioningly. And all governments need to recognize the God-given authority. You also quoted 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 17. And I would also like to throw in Titus chapter 3 and 1 Peter chapter 2, which speak about, yes again, God gave government the authority. But those passages does not speak to the limit of that God-given authority, nor do they speak to the duties of government that God has delegated to government.
Thank you. We've got the point. We have a few more callers wanting to get in, and we thank you for pressing on that particular point. Do we have another caller ready? Yes, caller, you're on the air. Do we have another caller before we invite the Deputy Prime Minister to take a go at any of the calls that we have had?
I think for the most part, what we have had so far would be commendations to the government in terms of what the government has been able to do to date. The government has said to persons consistently that financially the government has performed well. I think our response has demonstrated that indeed financially the government has been performing well. If the government hadn't been performing well, the government would not have been able to offer a stimulus package to the extent of $120 million over a 3-month period. Persons should also recognize that when that stimulus package was announced, there are certain other measures which would not have been included. Even as I speak to what we have been able to do within the education sector, that wasn't included as part of the stimulus package. As we face each day, we recognize that we are having different challenges, and as best as possible, we are responding to those challenges. When the Prime Minister spoke, he said that we are going to offer assistance to our students who are overseas studying. That again wasn't included in the stimulus package, but it is because we have resolves. I recognize the question coming from Mr. Howell about CBI revenues, and do we foresee the government going back to the IMF? Of course, CBI revenues would decrease. Persons aren't able to travel, persons aren't able to do the necessary marketing of the CBI program. And so coming out of that, the natural effect is an increase in revenues, just as we have had an increase in revenues from just about every aspect of the operations of government. However, do we foresee ourselves going back to the IMF? We don't expect to be able to go back to the IMF. We have been as generous as we have been because we have taken all factors into consideration. And if we feel or we felt that by going this particular route we would be going back to the IMF, then of course the stimulus package would have been smaller than it is. However, it is not that way. And even as we began doing our discussions in terms of the economy, we said, and this is a question which came up, I think, at the very first or second show, that our capital projects, we want to continue with our capital projects, we want to implement our capital projects because we recognize that in light of the fact that there is a fallout with the tourism sector, we need to stimulate economic development here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and the government would have to take the lead in doing so. We have partially reopened the country, and part of the partial reopening again is to stimulate economic activity, because the longer businesses remain closed, then of course you're looking at an even dire picture in terms of the government being able to at least raise some level of revenue. We are hoping that some persons have been laid off, for example, may be able to find job maybe on a construction site, because construction sites have also now reopened. What we want to say to persons is, you now have to look for new opportunities coming out of this. Those persons, for example, who have gone into delivery service, and quite a number of restaurants, for example, are now doing takeout, and so you have that particular opportunity. We are saying to some persons, we need to become more resilient in terms of growing our own food. We have 100 and something acres available for farming. We want to encourage persons to go into farming. Look within your own neighborhoods and see where there is a particular niche that you can fill, something that can assist you with making some level of income. Persons, for example, who have been doing afternoon classes, those persons are not able now to attend those classes, and so maybe some of those lecturers would be offering classes online. But even in terms of your own children and you need assistance with what is being taught via online, you may be able to contact someone who for a small fee would be able to give additional support to your children in terms of their education. And so these are some of the opportunities that we now must begin to look at come out of COVID-19. We can't look at it as if, well, it is the end of the world and there is absolutely nothing that we can do. The chairman of Carnival and I have been speaking, and he said, in terms of Carnival, most of the other islands have cancelled theirs to date. But is there any aspect for us to have some level of Carnival if we have to cancel in terms of doing it online? And so that is something that we're looking at, instead of saying cancel every single thing. You could have a Calypso Shawn line, you could have a Queen Shawn line, and you get persons to pay to log on to view it, etc. And so these are some of the opportunities that we must continue to look at. As best as the government is able to continue to manage the financial affairs, the government will do so. We paid salaries early last week. The GE workers, they were paid early. The step workers, they were paid early. And again, that is indicating to persons that fiscally we have been managing the affairs of this country very, very well indeed. We have been able to do so because I think generally as a people, we have all put our hands to the plow, and this isn't the time for us to give up and say there is no contribution that we can make. What are the opportunities which are now available to us? Let us have a discussion about them, and I'm sure that if there are persons out there with good ideas, the government is willing to give support to any of those ideas.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister, for very good response to those questions. Just to say and to confirm that our fiscal house is still in a good position, notwithstanding we have had over 120 million in unexpected expenditure vis-a-vis COVID. And even when we launched the stimulus or unveiled it at OTI on or about the 24th of March, we had projected that we will be spending about $16.9 million on health care, purchasing ventilators, nebulizers, making retrofittings to our hospitals and health centers, buying 2 new ambulances, etc., all to be in the best position to defeat COVID-19. Our health expenditures to date is running around $25 million. So things have moved significantly. We have had to spend a lot more as the essential equipments were in short demand. The price of necessity went upwards. We have also had to spend money in terms of the quarantining of persons, etc., etc. So we have been able to do this without drawing on any loan. And the answer which the Deputy Prime Minister gave is that we will try our very best, never again to have to go to the IMF. That is why early in our term, the Cabinet took the decision to pay off the debt left behind by the former administration of over $117 million. That is why we took the decision to pay substantial sums, and the over $100 million indebtedness for fuel left by the former administration as outstanding commitment to the government of Venezuela. In sum, we have always attempted, and we have always done so, to manage the finances of the country the best way we can. And as a result, for 5 years in a row, we were able to report not only economic growth, but surplus after surplus. The country is now seeing how that surplus, the building up of the surplus was a prudent decision, and now we are able to do a number of things to keep the people of St. Kitts and Nevis safe. Gregory, of course, will continue to differ and the matter of the authority of the government, but he does accept that the authority of the government comes from God. There is really nothing that the government at this time with respect to the COVID regulation is asking of the church fraternity that compromises them or go against the word of God. So on that we really should have no argument. But I want again to read three scriptures. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. And this is Romans 13, verse 1. Let everyone, not some, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. In other words, governments are set up and taken down by God. And the admonition and the encouragement is that everyone should be subject to the governing authorities. I want on this note to point to Gregory that the two largest church groups that we have here, the Evangelical Association and the Christian Council, have given full support to these. What we are attempting to do is not to hinder the exercise of the freedom of worship. In fact, we believe in it. We encourage everyone to basically pray and, of course, to conduct themselves appropriately. What we are attempting to do is to prevent persons in the pursuance of their religion from having become infected by the COVID-19. Again, it is a dangerous virus. It is killing people, and it has killed maybe 4 times the population of St. Kitts and Nevis the world over. It has infected over 2 million plus persons. So we are dealing with something very serious. And again, from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17, show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers, fear God, and honor the emperor. The emperor here is the metaphor, in our case, for the state, the honoring of the government. And again, the famous passage, give unto Caesar the things that are of Caesar's, and give unto God the things that are his. We are not in conflict. We are trying to save people, whether they belong to a church or not. The regulations, again, allow for worship to continue, albeit for such a time like this, virtually. So there's no contradiction there. The poverty, I want to thank the lady who called in appreciation for the $1,000 payout, which have started over 1,000 applicants or application process. This, of course, marks the generosity and the compassion of the government. There's no other way in the world. You have seen the government responded in this manner and in this magnitude to so many sectors impacted by it. The self-employed, those who are in fact employees, all of them have received support from the government. When we take into account, because it's not just that direct amount, the fact that we have been able to get the banks to put a hold, a moratorium, and the payment of loans, that is a significant support. Some people are paying $1,500, $2,000 a month. For the next 6 months, they have a waiver on that, or a hold, a deferment of that. That is significant relief that we have brought to people. When you look at the significant expenditure the government through the Ministry of Education is undertaking to get the device, the laptop and other devices into the school to help the children to continue to learn, you know that this government is doing an excellent job to protect you and to help you. And what we need to do is to allow the government to continue to function. And this brings the question raised, I think, by Mr. Culture with regarding what is more important, the health and safety of our people or general elections. In my view, the health, safety, and protection of our people trump the election any day. we will have time for elections, but we certainly will not call an election to imperil the health and well-being of our people. So those who are anxious, they may want to continue their anxiety. The government right now is not focused on a general election. My focus and the focus of the cabinet will be to defeat the COVID-19, to protect our people from harm. That is the most important job of the government, protect our people. And all that we are doing now is really to protect people. And we will not allow the anxiety of some who are power hungry. They talk about election to get us to rush into an election and then turn back the gains that our health people, our HEOC, and our National Emergency Operations Center staff have done. They have brought us the country to the point. We were the last independent country to be affected, to have a confirmed case. And now we are moving nicely along. No deaths so far. Remarkable. BVI, I think just yesterday or 2 days ago, announced they had. Antigua has. Jamaica has. Trinidad has. St. Kitts and Nevis, thank God, we have none. And we are trying our very best to keep it this way. So even as we open up a bit, ease some of the restrictions, we were careful to follow the 6 guidelines established by the World Health Organization. So every step of the way, we are putting health first, and we will continue to do so. So that is where we are at this particular moment in time. I will invite the Deputy Prime Minister to begin the wrap-up unless we have another caller. We will probably take 2 more calls, and then we will have Miss Dr. Esdaille give a closing remark, and then we will have the Deputy Prime Minister, and then I will have my own closing remarks. So we can welcome 2 more questions if the line is still busy at this time. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, but we appear now to be able to connect with one of the callers. Caller, you're on the air. Leadership Matters, thank you for calling in.
Hello?
Yes, caller, thank you for calling Leadership Matters.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, caller, your voice dropped.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask those people who are getting the $500. Hello?
Yes, the $500 poverty alleviation.
I'm on time. Even though they're getting the $500, they will be getting the $1,000 still on the $500 they're getting?
Okay, we will get an answer to that. You allowed another caller to come in if that's the only question that you have.
Hello?
Yes, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, Mr. Prime Minister, I would just like to ask a question. Am I to understand you as saying that when Jesus and the men of God in the Bible, the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, disobeyed government, stood up against government, am I understanding you to say that they were disrespecting the king, that they were going against the scripture that says all authority is given to God from government and that sort of stuff? Because
Gregory, we didn't get into that conversation, so that will be a new topic.
Yes, I would just like to ask if that was your understanding that they were acting wrongly.
We could have a discussion about that at a later date.
Okay.
But I think we are all agreed with the relevance of the scriptures, that there is an obedience factor with respect to the authority of the government, and you have made the case that there will be exceptions to that rule. I have no contention with respect to that view, so I think we are settled with respect to that. My only difference with you was that you seem to imply that the regulations with respect to COVID prevents an area of challenge. And I said to you, no. And I would say to you, have a conversation with the leadership of the church bodies, and they will perhaps share their own views with you. But we have another caller online. Yes,
hello,
caller.
good night again, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good night.
Mr. Prime Minister, I walk around town after the closing out. And when you get up a morning time and you walk around Bastille, all these heads who in charge of the health department, Park and Beach, they're supposed to go around. That is where we give them vehicle for. The place must look clean. Not because we're closing down because of this thing. They got to go around, drive around, and assess the place and make these people come out and work. We're not giving them money because we could give them money. They got to keep the place clean too. And next thing I want to tell you, Mr. Prime Minister, this thing is a very serious thing. And asking you, those guys who you got going around to the bars, them, got a meeting with them and let them know how serious this thing be. Because if this thing take a toll in these ghetto, Orange Tongue and New Tongue and elsewhere, it's a real problem for you. Because are you doing a great job? The country see that? Even some of these should.
Thank you, Jam Down. We have a technical issue. We are sorry that call slipped, but we got the point and the seriousness of the matter which you have raised. We will go now to do the wrap-up, and we will invite Dr. Esdaille to give her concluding statement.
At this time, I'd like to make a further appeal to all parents and families to support and nurture your children during this period. Recognizing that education is a major component of your child's development, it is critical that you are actively involved in the learning process, beginning with monitoring of their self-paced learning on Flow Study. And should school closure be further protracted, leading us to launch virtual education, then we encourage you to support your child through the review of assignments, the monitoring of your child's submission of work in a timely fashion, and using the modes of communication which are shared with you by your child's school or teacher to do so, engaging teachers should issues or concerns arise. Further, it's important to pay attention to the emotional and social welfare of your children. In this age where most of our children are essentially digital natives with little to no learning curves when using online applications, it is still of the utmost importance that parents and guardians monitor internet use. The internet is a great tool for good, but it must be utilized responsibly. Please ensure that you have conversations with your children around their internet use, whether it be for education or for entertainment purposes. And I would encourage all adults charged with the care of children to monitor the sites on which children in your care spend their time. The Ministry of Education intends to continue to support families during this period, and we ask for your support in return. We will do our best to keep the lines of communication with you open and to address your concerns. May God continue to bless us all and keep our children and our loved ones safe.
Thank you, Dr. Esdaille. We appreciate your counsel and your support. You are an outstanding educator, and we are happy that you could have joined us tonight. To the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education.
I close by also extending commendations to Dr. Esdaille for joining us this evening. As I said earlier, she and the team at the Ministry of Education, they have done a wonderful job in ensuring that the education sector is prepared to manage the education of our children during this crisis. Today I listened to the briefing coming from NEAC. As the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Laws, spoke, she said to the public that St. Kitts and Nevis will have more cases. She supported this by the statistics and the words of advice coming from WHO, etc., in that 50 to 70% of any population is expected to contract COVID-19. It therefore says to the population here in St. Kitts and Nevis that we are nowhere out of the clear. And I think persons should take that quite seriously. We have relaxed the general way that we go about doing business over the last few days to allow more persons to be able to conduct business, to allow more persons to be able to go to the supermarkets, etc. However, I do believe that some persons have taken that to mean that all things are clear here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Again, that isn't the case. I want to appeal to persons to continue to practice the social distancing, to practice the good hygiene, to wear the mask, etc. Jam Down made the point earlier that he saw some persons at a particular bar in the Basti area. While he has made that point, that is not the only place that I have seen persons, because I myself would have passed the particular bar that he made reference to earlier. But even elsewhere, I have seen persons congregating, sitting down next to each other, standing next to each other. And those persons appear as if they don't have a care or concern in the world. We continue to say to persons that it is not every individual who will have symptoms of COVID-19. So because you don't hear someone coughing, sneezing, etc., having the symptoms, it doesn't mean that that person hasn't been infected and you can contract it from that particular individual. I have heard of cases of persons who have had it, and those persons have had absolutely not one single symptom. And that is going to be the case with many persons. 80% of the persons will have it perhaps moderately, and so in terms of symptoms, those persons will be termed to be asymptomatic. To the general population in St. Kitts and Nevis, again, please continue to exercise caution. A number of persons complained about the lockdowns, but if things are to get worse in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, indeed, there will be further lockdowns. In the BVI, that community was set to reopen, to have a gradual reopen as of yesterday. By Friday evening, early Saturday morning, the BVI had its first death due to COVID-19 and immediately went into a further 7 days of lockdown. So 14 full days in the first instance, and then when things were set to reopen, the next full days to take it to 21 full days of a 24-hour curfew. I heard the Premier making remarks to persons because after the 14 days, they would not have even had the opportunity to go to the supermarkets to replenish items. And he said, call the grocery stores and they would do deliveries. For those persons who are less fortunate, he said the government will pay for their foodstuff. But persons were not able to return to life as they would have expected it. We have been able to do so, but let us not take it for granted, because it only takes our own ignorance, our foolish behavior for that particular position to change. We have heard the arguments about who should be open, who should not be open, but we're trying to be as reasonable as possible, to exercise common sense, to exercise caution in going about the phase reopening here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It can only be achieved if we continue to work with each other towards that. Persons, when we had schools open, asked about schools, when are we going to close schools? Now persons are asking, when are the schools going to reopen? We cannot have it both ways. We need to understand the seriousness of this pandemic. Not because no one in the Federation has died to date, it doesn't mean that it is not possible. Persons who have systems that are compromised, those persons are more susceptible to COVID-19. And we want to continue to guard against that. We want all of our citizens to be able to survive this pandemic. But again, I repeat, our behavior to a large extent will determine what happens going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy, for your closing remarks, and thanking you for joining me in giving support to this significant challenge that we have. And your support in the Cabinet has been instrumental to our being able to achieve these. You have been in several of the leadership matters here, and I want to commend you for coming again. I still have the strong faith that the stronger and safer future that we promised the people of St. Kitts and Nevis is still within our reach. But of course, we have to defeat COVID-19 first. When COVID-19 reached our shores, we had one of the strongest economies in the world, and our fiscal house was being acclaimed far and near. COVID-19, of course, will batter and bruise us, but we will rise from it and get on to the task and the job of building a safer, stronger, and healthier St. Kitts and Nevis. Some of the investments we are making now, for example, in education, the build-out of the ICT and the virtual platform, will make the education sector in St. Kitts and Nevis stronger and better going forward. Equally, the investments that we are making in healthcare, the reorganization of our health systems. Our health system today is at its best it ever has been. So even as we are dealing with challenges, we can see the bright light at the end of the tunnel, and that we are put in a better and stronger place. Indeed, the Deputy Prime Minister spoke to opportunities which we have to look at. Clearly, with the challenges facing education, health, and every sector, we have come to better appreciate that the future belongs to those who will master the ICT, the information and communication technology, because that in part is one of the strongest answers. If you want to avoid the banks, certainly you do online banking. And certainly we have to get our supermarkets and other providers of goods and service to that stage of the technology so that they could respond. We are seeing opportunities for delivery, and more of that will begin to take place even after we would have overcome COVID-19. Certainly we have seen a new industry in mass making emerge, where Sun Island Clothes is producing close to 15,000 masks per month now. This is significant, and we have a number of new players. Today I learned that in Mansion, there is a seamstress there who is doing lovely masks. Today I learned in Molyneux, a former teacher of home management at the Keon High School, Faustina Wilson, is also producing some very lovely masks, and they provide for easy breathing. So I have to go and try them and encourage all of us, therefore, to again ensure that we wear a mask, and we have several in our disposal. That is to protect us, that is to protect those with whom we come into contact. So all is not lost. It is a difficult time. We see the difficulties everywhere. We see it in England. We see it in the US of A. We see it in Italy, where powerful countries are basically going to their knees from the onslaught of COVID-19. We are lucky that at this time, we are at a better place than most countries in the world. But the danger still lurks, and therefore we have to exercise utmost caution. As at Tuesday at 3 p.m., the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 worldwide stood at 3.42 0.4 million persons. 2.4 million persons were tested positive. And the number of deaths worldwide was 162,956. That is significant. Think of that, it's like the population of St. Kitts and Nevis being wiped out 3 times over. So this is significant in terms of death. We are fortunate that we only have 15 cases, and we want to confirm cases to keep that this way for as long as possible. However, having regard to the experience elsewhere, we could well know that the number will change over time. What is good for us is that we do not have any admissions at this time. It means that the intensity of the impact here has been milder than it is in countries where there has been the loss of life. So I want to encourage our people to continue to protect yourself. Follow the simple rules. Hand hygiene, improve upon your sanitation everywhere. Continue to wear the mask, continue to observe the social distancing, and do what you can to boost your immune system. I want to assure you that the government will not be swayed from its plans to keep St. Kitts and Nevis headed in the right direction, keeping our streets safe as we have done before COVID and continuing now. We will continue our program to build better homes for our people, and of course always on our mind is creating more opportunities for our young people to start their own businesses and to excel. And that is part of the job of the education sector, to ensure that our young people could have positive views of themselves and can be engaged in constructive and responsible ways in our society. So all these things we would be able to do, but we must get on with the job of dealing with the pandemic, and it requires all of us coming together to be able to do it. We took the right actions, restricting travelers, enforcing quarantine, closing our borders when other countries said that they will keep them open. The government has a plan, and our plan to date has succeeded tremendously in keeping the people safe. I want you to continue to abide by the health guidelines, to respect the regulations, observe the curfew, and to work with the government. I am trusting you. The federal government is trusting you to do those common sense things that have been outlined. Simple and necessary they are. We are trusting you to do that, and you can trust my government to always be there with you and to protect you. So thanks one and all for tuning in tonight. We pray for the continuing protection and safety of our country, and I want to say thank you to all who have listened in, who have been part of this program, who continue to pray for our country, and please, of course, continue to pray for the government, that all of us will move from the point we are at, cross the proverbial Red Sea to a new land of Canaan, safety and prosperity. Thank you again, one and all.